Well, our next session is on the cheerful subject of cyber war in 2013. Let's hope it doesn't actually come to real war, but Dick Clarke is the president of Good Harbor Consulting and the author of Cyber War, The Next Threat to National Security and What to Do About It. So please welcome Dick Clarke for his predictions.
Well, thank you and good afternoon. When I was in the intelligence business, I told presidents and secretaries of state that I don't make predictions. They didn't like that. Nor did they like my predictions. Predictions are difficult, but I can say a few things about cyber security and cyber war in the next year. We can say with high confidence that hundreds of millions, billions, in fact, of dollars will be stolen next year by cyber criminals who will not get caught. Cybercrime pays. We can also say with high confidence that cyber espionage, the theft of intellectual property, research and development, even transactional information, will result in the loss to companies, again, of billions of dollars, as nation states, particularly China, steal information from American and European companies and give it to Chinese companies. In short, we pay for the R&D and they get it for free. Hard to compete with that going on, but that will go on next year as it's been going on. What about cyber war? The Secretary of Defense, Leon Panetta, said in this city last month that we are at a pre-9/11 moment when it comes to cyber war. He said there are people with capabilities who are plotting to use them against us. He was referring to Iran, but he didn't say it explicitly. Iran had just engaged in an attack on the Saudi oil company Aramco, wiping clean 30,000 computers in the largest wipe attack so far seen. And the Iranians had been behind an attack on a series of U.S. banks, flood attacks, 10 times larger than anything that had ever been seen before, that knocked U.S. banks offline, one day after another, one bank after another. If the United States and Israel bomb Iran next year to stop the Iranian nuclear program, I think we can say with high confidence that Iran will retaliate, not just in the Arabian Gulf, but also, since Israel or the United States will have attacked their homeland, Iran will attack in our homeland. Not with terrorism, but with cyber war. Knocking out banking, perhaps, knocking out electricity, perhaps, causing havoc and getting away with it, because we cannot defend successfully today against that kind of attack.
Well, that's a sobering thought to start a conversation with. As it happens, by coincidence, there were 2 pages in this week's Economist, which you should all have, on the subject of cyber war. And I think it's helpful, first of all, just to, if you could help us, walk us through what exactly is meant by cyber war, because you yourself there mentioned cyber crime, cyber espionage. There tends to be a sort of blurring of these lines. What exactly do you mean by cyber war?
I think there are 4 distinct phenomena, and you can remember them easily by using the word CHEW, C-H-E-W. There's cyber crime, which is very successful, and is the theft of money. It happens all the time. There's cyber hacktivism, the H, which is anonymous, WikiLeaks, other groups that steal information in order to publish it for political reasons. There's cyber espionage, which is what I think is the most serious thing today. And that is the theft, not of money, but of information. Particularly information from private companies and from universities. Research and product information that gives certain countries like China an unfair economic advantage. And then there's cyber war, which we really haven't seen very much of yet. Arguably, you could say that when the United States destroyed some nuclear centrifuges at Natanz in Iran, physically destroyed them with a cyber attack, that was war. For me, the definition of war is disruption, destruction, or damage. Not just turning out the lights, but destroying the generator so it can't come back on. Destroying the transformer so it can't come back on. We've demonstrated that that can be done in experiments. In fact, you can go to YouTube and look up the Aurora, Idaho experiment and see a big electrical generator blowing itself up because of cyber commands that were given to it. Leon Panetta, the Secretary of Defense, talked about commands that cause trains to derail, commands that cause refineries to catch fire. Now, basically, everything we do all day long these days is connected to a network. And we do have the Internet of Machines talking to machines and machines controlling machines. And we haven't secured it.
Yeah. But let's just stick with the war, with the W bit for a moment. It's still at the stage, is it not, where no one has actually died in a cyber war. Is that right?
I think that's probably right.
Not to diminish it, but I just want to get the sense.
I think that is probably right, and it's a very important point. Very important point. Because for a lot of Americans, particularly after 9/11, we have a body bag mentality about the importance of these things. If it's a national security issue, we think people have to die before it's important. And if that's our criteria, fine. But that says that all the espionage that's going on, all the economic damage that's going on, isn't important because no one's dying. If New York City were thrown into darkness, if the lights went out and stayed out for a week, if Wall Street had all of its data corrupted, and the U.S. economy was thrown into a tailspin by that, people may not die as a result of that. But if you're in a house where you can't get food because the rail system has been disrupted, and the power system has been disrupted, and you can't get money out of your ATM machine, you're in a cold house without heat, without power, without communications, without money, and without food, you might be upset.
But there's also an element, is there not, the cyber element of conventional warfare would be quite important in future in the early stages. The first thing you might try to do is knock out capabilities of your enemy, or have them knocked out, or worry that they might be knocked out, your own might be knocked out.
In 2008, when Russia invaded Georgia, the nation of Georgia, not Atlanta.
That would be taking cyber war to a new dimension, of course. Yeah.
As the Russian tanks crossed the border into Georgia, simultaneously a cyber attack hit Georgia and knocked out its telecommunications, its banking, its connectivity to the outside world. So you're right. Cyber war will probably always be part of a larger kinetic war. And cyber war, I think, will only happen when a nation is going to go to war anyway. No nation is going to say, oh, I have a new shiny cyber weapon, let's go out and go to war and see if it works. We've had nuclear weapons since 1945. 9 nations have them. No one has used one since 1945. So, if the United States and Iran get into a shooting war next year, which is highly possible, there'll probably be a cyber dimension to it. And that will probably bring it to this country.
So I want to talk about the United States' role and actually who is doing, or who might do, cyber war to whom, because the United States is obviously not an innocent bystander in all this. You mentioned Stuxnet. It has practiced, one supposes, a degree of, or it has a degree of cyber war capability. Who else are the big players? Who are the superpowers of cyber war?
Well, so the CIA says there are between 20 and 30 countries that have cyber warfare units with significant offensive capability. The nations that have announced that are the usual suspects: China, Russia, Israel, the United Kingdom, Germany. But North Korea has it, believe it or not. I was in Brazil last month talking to their cyber military unit. So a lot of people have it. And the interesting trend here is that the skill sets required to do offensive cyber war are proliferating rapidly. And while we could have said 10 years ago that it was essentially the United States and Russia that have the capabilities, now it's far broader because it's cheap. It's relatively cheap to do compared to any other form of war.
I learned from the Economist article this week that there is actually a cyber command in the United States headed by someone called General Keith Alexander.
We have a 4-star general running something called Cyber Command. It has 27,000 people in it. It has a Navy component, which is the 10th Fleet. The 10th Fleet has no ships, it has no boats, it's in cyberspace. We have the 24th Air Force, which has no airplanes or missiles. It's in cyberspace.
Now, a couple of other things, and then we'll open it up to the audience. But you've talked mainly about cyber, what might be called cyber offense, but there is also the question of cyber defense. So how good is the United States, relatively speaking, at each of those?
So the United States is very good at cyber offense, as it demonstrated in the case of Stuxnet. Stuxnet had made a mistake. The attack package was supposed to destroy itself after it killed the centrifuges, and it didn't. It escaped and ran around the internet. And you could actually find it on the internet if you want to download it. I wouldn't suggest that, but it only will destroy Iranian nuclear power plants. So if you don't have one of those, then you're probably all right. The United States is very bad at defense, as is everybody else. The nature of the technology is such that there's what we call offense preference. And it costs thousands of times the amount of money to defend as it does to attack.
And the opposite of cyber war would presumably be cyber peace, which is a chapter in your book.
Right.
So how do you get to cyber peace? Is there an equivalent of a cyber equivalent of arms control?
I believe there is, and I may be the only one who does, but nations are beginning to talk informally about things that they could do to reduce tension. And both the United Kingdom and the United States have open talks with Russia on cyber risk reduction, which is communications channels, transparency measures. I think we have to begin with small steps, but I think we can have cyber arms control. And frankly, you know, when we began nuclear arms control, and I was involved in that, people said we'd never get there. They said that about biological arms control and chemical arms control, and we got all of those. It just took 10 or 15 years, so maybe we should start now.
Okay, let's take some questions from the audience. There's one in the third row back here. A lot of questions, actually. Let's take one at the third row here, and then there's a gentleman at the middle there at the back. I can see his hand up.
Hello, my name is Barris. I work at Google, actually, and I feel like the things that you've said, I've heard it about 12, 13 years ago with the year 2K problem. You know, we said the Wall Street was going to go down, you know, the banks will be wiped out, and etc. And nothing happened. You can crash a car by issuing commands. I mean, it's designed into the system. So I'm thinking that, you know, these are by design, that, you know, you can issue commands to do these things. I feel I'm a little bit on the skeptical side. I feel like is it that easy to come and, you know, blow up stuff?
So is there cyber hype?
Well, first of all, on Y2K, I would love to know what would have happened had we not spent billions of dollars changing everything before that date rolled over. And it's kind of hard to tell. But we did, around the world, and particularly here in the United States, spend billions of dollars fixing the Y2K bug before that date rolled around, which may have something to do with why nothing happened. I don't know. I hope there's hype. I hope I'm wrong. Other people seem to agree with me, though. You know, we're spending a lot of money in have this cyber command, and other countries have these cyber commands, and that suggests to me that I'm probably right.
Gentleman in the middle.
Hi. I would like to know if your perspective on the concept of full spectrum dominance, and that's a military concept of domination of air, land, sea, space, and the cyber sphere, and whether that's realistically achievable.
I find it very disturbing that in the last few years this phrase has crept into the U.S. military's parlance of dominance. And it's just a little kinky, I think, to have our admirals talking about dominance. I think it's also a little arrogant, frankly. What we should talk about is cybersecurity, offensive cyber capability, defensive cyber capability. But we turn an awful lot of people off in this country and around the world when we have generals and admirals running around talking about dominating the cyber domain. We need cooperation from a lot of people around the world and in this country to achieve cybersecurity. And militarizing the issue and talking about how the U.S. military have to dominate the cyber domain is not helpful.
There's one in the middle, lots of hands going up, but why don't we take 2 or 3 questions together and then we can give you a shot at. So right in the middle here, and then the gentleman in front of you as well.
Okay, thank you. My name is Zongo. I have a funny question. The CIA is spying around the world for the benefit of the US companies and whatever. What's wrong with China doing the same thing?
Okay, let's take this one as well.
Thanks for coming out to talk to us. My question is related to the big data panel. Basically, they said that in 2013, big data will merge with the physical network of things. Will that make the U.S. more vulnerable to a cyber attack, or does that give us more possibilities to defend ourselves?
2 good questions.
Okay, on the China question, the question was, what's wrong with China spying? I don't think there's anything wrong with China spying. What I think is wrong with what China is doing, in violation of the WTO rules and others, is having its government go out and spy on private sector companies here in the United States and in Europe, and take that information that they get from those private sector companies and give it to allegedly private sector companies in China, who then sell their products in the United States. So that U.S. stockholders and U.S. taxpayers pay for the R&D. The Chinese companies get it for nothing and then sell their wares in the United States. That's an unfair economic advantage. The United States does not do that. The United States does not hack its way into Rolls-Royce engines and give the information to General Electric engines. You can believe that or not, but I spent a lot of time with U.S. intelligence, and I can tell you we don't do that. With regard to big data and the network of things, it's the network of things that makes us vulnerable. The fact that most internet traffic today is not people talking to people, but it's machines talking to machines. And those machines automatically do things when given certain commands. And all of those networks are connected to the internet. The electric power companies will tell you that their command and control networks are not connected to the internet, and every experiment the U.S. government has conducted, it's been able to get to the command network from the internet.
We probably have time for, well, let's take a couple of questions. Lady here in row 4 and down here at the front. We'll take those questions together.
So going back to the topic of cyber war, what are the implications when you're talking about the vulnerability, especially for an attack and how difficult it is to defend, when we're acquiring military equipment increasingly that is dependent on computer programs and codes like F-35s and that sort of thing?
Okay, and this one more from the front here.
Hello, thank you very much. How does U.S. normally react to cyber attacks, whatever it's C, H, E, or W? What is the retaliation, and how much damage will trigger actual hot war, and sort of other rules around what is the appropriate response to a certain type of chew attack? Thank you.
Okay, you have to chew on that for 1 minute.
Okay. According to the Economist article, the President issued a secret directive last month establishing the rules for cyber war and for cyber attack. To date, I don't think there's been retaliation. But in the shortest way possible, the United States has said it will consider the extent of the damage done, regardless of how it's done, whether it's done by a missile or a cyber attack, and will retaliate appropriately depending upon who did it and what they did, not how they did it. With regard to the weapon systems, the F-35 that you mentioned, vast amounts of the code for the F-35 systems were stolen before the plane ever flew. So, stolen by a friendly Asian government. So, you may well think that in the future, if there were a war, if weapon systems might roll out onto the battlefield and not work.
Thank you very much. We're out of time with that thought. Thank you very much, Victor. Thank you.